Welcome, everybody, to the Xavier Basketball Weekly Show on the Gruely Truth Sports Network. I am your host for the Xavier Basketball Weekly Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Xavier broadcasting legend, Andy MacWilliams. How you doing, Andy Mac?
I've been better on Fridays and other seasons and other weeks, but it's not all gloom and doom. I mean, things could be better. A win over Marquette the other night would have put a whole different, maybe a smile on my face at 3-5 with an NET around 50 with that win over Marquette would have put Xavier in much better condition, but they're not dead yet.
Yeah, and they're not dead yet. And this is a very talented basketball team. And the thing that really was bad was Marcus Howard goes down with he leaves the game for most of the second half. They couldn't take advantage of that, and the officiating was atrocious. But when you look at the stats here, Xavier outshot him from the 3-point line, made more threes, shot almost 50% from the three-point line, but rebounding was about even. But the free throw percentage in the end was the killer.
Yeah, that was hit when Howard went down with about a little over 12 minutes left. He took an elbow to the nose. I don't know if he broke it or not, but he did not return. When he went out, Xavier was up roughly 8, and they just they missed 9 free throws down the stretch in regulation and the 2 OTs, and you can argue they made 1 or 2 more strategic free throws in regulation. It would have been a really big victory for them, but shoulda, woulda, coulda. The officials, I mean, that was a brutal crew. I have no idea what they were thinking. Not much, I guess, is the answer there, but that's an excuse, and it's on to Seton Hall on. With one of those hated early, the players hate to play at 11 a.m. for TV. And hopefully the Seton Hall guys, I don't know if they put them in a hotel in Newark or they have to, make their way to the arena. Maybe, they get caught on the Jersey Turnpike and be late to showing up or something. But, I'm grasping at straws here a little bit, I think.
But that's all right. We all grasp at straws sometimes. The one good thing I did take away with this was, especially late in the game, the reemergence of Quentin Gooden.
Yeah, I thought there were a number of steps forward for Xavier. They certainly rebounded a lot better against Marquette than they did up in Milwaukee. Although they barely, I think they had 15 offensive boards and. They got the ball to the rim a lot better. Quentin Gooden was, he sat out for 2 games, and he's totally healthy right now, and he really attacked the rim well. And he made 5 3-pointers. He's not a bad 3-point shooter. I've watched him for 4 years, and he has to be I think he moves into the starting lineup at Seton Hall, and they got to play him at the point. I mean, he's a 4-year guy. He's 4th on the all-time Xavier assist list behind some pretty good players and Ralph Lee and Jamal Walker and Tu Holloway. He's about to make it 1,000 points on. You got to go with Q. I mean, play Tandy, the freshman, some maybe off the ball because he is a flamethrower from 3. But Q's got to play. That moves Scruggs off the ball where he can not worry so much about the ball handling, distributing. He's a moose when he takes it to the bucket. And that switches Najee to the 3, where I think Najee Marshall can do better off the dribble. He's got to score 20 a game here. And then, with the 2 bigs, I think play really well together. Tyreek Jones is going to give you a double-double no matter what. He's the senior. He and Fremantle, I mean, they complement each other. And I think Big Zach has really learned how to get his shot off and be more of a factor against some of these bigger bodies that he's confronting in the Big East. And in Game 1 against Seton Hall in Cincy back on January 8th, the Hall won it by 12. They outplayed Xavier. They killed them on the boards. And Fremantle really had his problems with their 2 7-footers, primarily Romero Gill, who has really emerged this year. I mean, he's the Big East shot block leader at 5 a game, and the other guy, Obagawu, whatever his name is, the kid from Florida State, is not bad either. I think Fremantle now knows what he's up against. Both he and Tyreek are going to have to have big games in Newark on Saturday, and stay on the floor, avoid foul trouble. I think there's a path for Xavier to knock off this Seton Hall team. I mean, if you look at they've won 10 in a row. They're 16-4. They're about to be ranked maybe 8th. They might move up to as high as 5th if they beat X on Saturday. They lead the Big East. They're ahead of Villanova, but I think they're about due to lose one, and Xavier certainly needs to win one. This would be a huge NET victory. If they keep the score in the 50s or 60s, Villanova isn't a flame-throwing team. If they can keep the score and control tempo, win the board battle, as you say, find a way to make 7 or 8 threes, and certainly, add 30 points to that free throw number, get it up to 70, and get to the line 25 times. I think they can beat this team.
Yeah, and trying to score against Seton Hall's defense while also attempting to slow down a player like Miles Powell and the rest of that Pirates backcourt is a tall task. And I think that's one of the main reasons Seton Hall is currently in the top 10, and as you said, poised to move upwards. But I think Xavier, no doubt, has the talent to pull off this upset on the road. And we've seen teams before. This is a tough conference to win games in, whether it's home or away. They've won 10 straight. So as my dad would always say, they're due to lose.
I would agree. And you hit the nail right on the head with their defense. I mean, they give up only like 60 points a game on their home floor. They're 9-1 at the Rock in Newark. Their only loss came real early when Michigan State, of all teams, beat them by 3. I mean, they give them about 60 a game, and they're number 6 in the country in Travis Steele's favorites stat. That's defensive efficiency. Number 6, they only give up like 88.6 points per 100 possessions, which is really that's super stingy. And they also teams only shoot 43.4% effective field goal against them, which is 12th in the country. And they're not a great shooting team by any means. Powell's the guy. I mean, he bails them out in second halves all the time. He averages 24 a game. He's a magic shooter. He's not maybe quite as ball dominant as Marcus Howard, but man, he hits the big shots. And he's averaged, I think, 20 a game in 7 starts against X. Xavier has beaten him 4 times. Xavier's 4-3 against Seton Hall with Powell in the lineup. So that, I guess, and they beat him last year down there. Najee dumped in 28 against basically the same Seton Hall team. And Tyreek had a huge game. I think he had 18 points, 13 rebounds. So, I mean, there is a path to pull off the upset here. I like to be optimistic. I personally hate 11 a.m. games, but it's the same time zone and same tip time for both teams. So, I mean, Xavier certainly will be motivated to win this game because we're getting down to a point where they got to find a way to win 9 games in the Big East before they go to New York for the Big East tournament. 9 wins and maybe 5th or 6th place in the league, that gets them an NCAA at large bid. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. This league is a beast top to bottom. If they can go 9-9 in the league, and they got 10 games left, so they have to go 7-3 here. They're in the NCAA, barring the NET formula being revised behind closed doors by some screwball in Indianapolis, which could happen. I hate the NET because it's not totally transparent. And I mean, X is, for the first time in years, X is looking really good in the Ken Palms and the RPIs. And of course, those things are irrelevant now. It's all NET or bust because the NCAA has given it the kiss of death. It's their proprietary ranking tool, and nothing else matters.
Yeah, and when you look at it, Seton Hall, Villanova, Butler, Creighton, Marquette all look like virtual locks to get in. So that's 5 teams right there. But if you're going to get a 6 team, you got Providence and Xavier sitting there with each other. Xavier plays Providence next week at the Seton Center. And Providence, even though they're ahead of Xavier, that 11-10 record doesn't look real pretty. In their non-conference, they did not look like an NCAA tournament team.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost a certainty that there will be 6 Big East teams, and you rattled off the top 5 there: Butler, Villanova, Seton Hall, Marquette, and Creighton are all in the top 25 of the NET. At the moment, Georgetown is ahead of, and DePaul are ahead of Villanova, ahead of Xavier. But who knows? Somebody's going to get 6th, and first guy to 9 wins. I think you could see an 8-10 7th place team get in, depending on how the wins are distributed. But it's not like if X were like 7th in the A10 or in the All American, what do they call that? The AAC.
Yeah, whatever
whatever that piece of garbage is.
Yeah.
If they were 7th or 6th in the league, it'd be ball game over. They'd have to win the conference tournament. The Big East is so strong, they're going to get 6 in, and if they get the 9 wins, that's all that matters. You don't have to worry about East Cupcake State, being a bid stealer in the Mountain West or something. It's Big East focus. You know what you got to do. Do it. Win 7. Last year, heck, Xavier was 3-8 on February 9th with a 109 NET. They got to 9-9, and they just barely missed an NCAA. But this league, the Big East this year, is much stronger than last year. Actually, it's about 30 spots across the board better in the NAT than last year. And if X had beaten Marquette, shoulda, woulda, coulda, but if they'd beaten them, they would have been a 50 NET with a 3-5 league record. Which, I mean, that was a huge one to not to win. I mean, geez, you just sort of like beat your head against the wall to lose that to that team in Cincinnati in double overtime and make 11 of 25 free throws. My God, that's like, you might as well, that's NAIA numbers or something. But it happened. I was there. You were there.
Actually, NAIA teams usually shoot free throws better than D1 teams. They just don't do it.
You're right.
Else as good.
You're exactly right. And the women do the same thing. They have a good technique. I don't know. They all shoot the eyes out of it from. I mean, they're high school teams, in the country that shoot. I don't know. Everybody shoots better than 44%. I don't know what the hell happened.
Yeah, and the one thing about free throws, it seems if a couple start missing it, it just kind of feeds over and everybody starts missing. The thing that I take away
from... It's like the coronavirus. It's like SARS. I don't know. It's like the avian flu when they start missing free throws.
I don't know. I don't take a virus seriously that's named after a beer.
I think that the federal government should award every... a red-blooded American a 6-pack of Corona just to help ward off that virus.
Yeah, well, and I mean, lime and lemons are good for antibacterial things too. So you can.
They are. I mean, it's vitamin C. I think this makes a lot of sense. The government ought to do that for us.
Yeah, well, the government doesn't do anything for us. They'll do it for people to. Yeah, they'll do it for people to don't live here. But we'll get off of that before we start a controversy. The other thing I take away from this is Seton Hall, it's not like they've dominated everybody. I mean, they struggled with DePaul, beat them 64-57, almost lost to St. John's in Madison Square Garden last week. Now, to me, the last great performance they had was in Butler, where they did take down a red-hot Butler team 78-70. So I think even when you get on a long win streak, you have these periods. I mean, if we look at the Big Ten, which is another conference, I think, similar to the Big East, where everybody's pretty good, and you had Michigan State go to Purdue and lose by 30. So, I mean, things like this happen, and the desperation that Xavier should go into this game with should be able to give them a chance, because this game means a lot more right now to Xavier than it should to Seton Hall.
You've made my case. I feel a lot better now. I feel bullish, despite the 11 a.m. start tomorrow. And the Of course, there is a wild card for Seton Hall. Their big stretch four, the European, I don't know if he's from Slovakia, I think, Sandro Mamukalashvili. He's a junior. He's 6'11". I mean, he's a stretch four. He came back and played a little bit against DePaul. He fractured his right wrist on, I think, December 8th. He's missed 10 games. He played a little against DePaul. Of course, he's left-handed, so it's not that big a deal, I guess. But he was on the floor, and I would expect that Kevin Willard will try to get him a lot more minutes. He's only practiced like 4 or 5 times, so he'll try to get him a lot more minutes again. So that might work to Xavier's advantage. I mean, he's a really good player, but he's a European guy. He was probably down at the coffee house. He didn't do his running, even though he had
he's smoking cigarettes, sitting
wrist,
out on the porch. You know that, drinking some wine.
I think you're right. I mean, he probably had a fifth of hooch in his dorm room and whatever. They love him though. They gave him a standing ovation when he returned against DePaul in the first half. But the Rock was rocking, and I don't know. They're due to lose. Heck, Ken Palm has Seton Hall an 11-point favorite. I think the Vegas line is around 11. So why not? Take the under.
That's too big of a line. I think we can cover that at least.
Well, I'm not worried about covering. I'm worried
I know.
about double. I mean, I go to the Big East tournament every year. I don't want to go to a game on Wednesday, the play-in game. That's a wasted game there. No NIT. Jeez.
No NIT. The NIT used to be fun, but it's not so much anymore.
Not when you have a steady diet of NCAA berths.
Yeah. The NIT stopped being fun after 1984.
And all that.
Yeah, no more fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great, and the '84 NIT actually was a catalyst to what we now have in Xavier basketball. They had a huge run in that tournament, beat Nebraska, beat Ohio State, and got totally screwed by the officials and everybody else. And the game at Michigan, when Michigan had Tim McCormick and Roy Tarpley, they had a hell of a team. I mean, that was the year before they allowed, you could only have one Big Ten team in the NCAA, so they go to the NIT.
You could have more. What happened to Michigan that year, if I remember right, because I was a huge Indiana fan at the time because I lived in Indiana. And the big thing with that team was I think Tarpley missed 7 or 8 games in the middle of the season. And
he had a drug problem, which he continued.
Yeah. Well, at the time, at the time they said he had a twisted ankle, but he missed 7 or 8 games. And I think the only real shooter they had was Gary Grant on that team. I think he was.
No, Grant was not there. They had Antoine Jobert.
Yeah, Jobert is who I was thinking of.
They had the umpire. They had Chris Pellikoutis. His father was a major league umpire. They had McCormick. They had Tarpley. They had the fat guard from Detroit, Jobert, and I forget. But
Yeah, but I think injuries.
That came down to the final possession up at Michigan, and the officiating was suspect to say the least.
Oh, it sucked, Andy. Just say it. It was bad. I remember watching that game, but that was a Michigan team.
I used to be really sour on officials, but I've seen the light now.
Yeah, that was a Michigan team that the next year, if you remember when Villanova made their run in the second round of the tournament, the first upset Villanova pulled was they beat Michigan, I think, in the second round of that tournament.
I believe it. Your command of history is unparalleled.
Yeah, as my wife said, my command of anything before the new century is awesome. Anything over the last 20 years, I can't remember a damn thing.
I'm with you. Brain cells are dying as we speak.
Yeah, but for some reason, my old brain cells stay awake. It's like I could go through the first 30 Super Bowls and pretty much give you a play-by-play of what happened. I couldn't tell you who won the Super Bowl 4 years ago.
No, well, I'm not really interested in that NFL stuff anymore. It's just too much of a star system, and everybody's got a brand to to work on.
Don't you think that's every sport now? Because everybody always tells me it's just because I'm old, but 70s and 80s were a hell of a lot better than what we see today.
Yeah, but with all the focus was on the floor, performance, and I could care less about their Facebook and Twitter. And although I do a lot of Twitter stuff, I have fun with that. I don't know if anybody reads it, but
it's because we have to, though.
Yeah, really. Jeez, bring back. Well, I don't even get the paper delivered anymore.
No, I don't know the last time I read a paper.
I love that. When I go to a city, I'd buy all the papers, sit there and read it all, and not anymore.
No, hell, most papers don't even exist anymore, I don't think.
And they're headed for oblivion. The business model is quickly deteriorating.
Yes, it is. So
I do like the Athletic, though. I like the Athletic. I'm a subscriber. I actually pay money to get the Athletic.
See, I refuse to pay money for it. I refuse to pay money for anything because I used to get newspapers. It was like a quarter.
I know. Jeez,
but yeah,
if you get a Wall Street Journal these days, it's like $5.
Really?
Dang. $4 at least.
That's $4 too much.
I'm not complaining. I see a Muskie resurgence. I see 9 wins. I see an 11 seed playing in Dayton again. I don't want to go up there. We did that in 2014. That was ugly.
Yeah. I go up there anyways, so I'll watch it.
I like you at UD Arena. They always, except for one time, they always treated me well up there. And they're still carping about not being in the Big East. And Xavier, ganged up on them and blackballed them, which is so much crap.
Oh, they're ranked in the top 10. They shouldn't be bitching about anything.
Good luck. They'll get knocked out in the first round.
I don't think they will, Andy. I know I don't like them either.
I haven't watched them play. I like Anthony Grant. He's a good man. I remember him as a player. He had to play behind some guys, but he was always a good team guy and a very talented player. He played, back in the 80s and early 90s, I think. They had some great teams back there.
Especially Roosevelt Chapman.
Mick a friend of mine. Yeah. I see, Mick's a good man, and he totally got screwed when they fired him, and they brought in that other guy who won with his players in 1990. And they had
that
Greavy
90 team,
and Miguel Knight and all those guys.
The 90 team, they made it to did they make it to the Sweet 16? Or I remember
they got
upset somebody.
They got knocked out by Illinois. They got knocked out by Arkansas, and they almost beat them.
That's right.
And if Norm Greavy had played, that guy Stephen Bardo, who's on TV, he rammed him into the basket support late in Dayton's win over Illinois, just cleaned him out. And Greavy's a great shooter. And if they have him against Arkansas, they knock off Nolan Richardson and the early iteration of 40 Minutes of Hell. And they end up, and if Xavier had beaten the Texas, and they almost did, it would have been an Elite Eight, Xavier against UD.
That would have been awesome.
That would have been awesome. And those teams played 3 times during the regular season and in the MCC tournament. And there were 3 unbelievably up-tempo games. And Dayton beat Xavier twice, back-to-back Saturdays at UD Arena, and then in the championship game of the MCC tournament at UD Arena. And those were some of the best basketball games I have ever seen. And they should have played. I think they would have played in the Elite Eight with somebody going to the Final Four.
Yeah. That would have been great. Of course, then you run into UNLV in 1990. That would have been no fun. But still, it would have been
cares?
the Final Four.
A team out of the MCC making the Final Four, baby.
If you remember this,
man, that would have been great.
The closest anybody came to beating UNLV that year was Chandler Thompson and Ball State in the Sweet 16, where I think they lost 64-62 to UNLV.
Oh, was that Majerus?
I think Majerus was there, and it was Chandler Thompson and Paris McCurdy.
Yes. Majerus was the best single game coach I've ever seen. Best game coach.
He could coach. He got Ball State to the Sweet 16. He took Utah to the national championship game. And my favorite Dayton Flyer of all time was Roosevelt Chapman. on the 84 team that went to the Elite
1984, they were down to the Final Five because they played.
They were the last game on the West Coast.
They played out west, so the other games were all over, and we all, hey, they're in the Final Five, and they lost, didn't they? They lost to Georgetown, obviously.
Yeah, and that Georgetown team was as good a defensive team as I've ever seen, though.
Yeah, Chapman, unbelievable player. He could get his shot off. He could do it all.
If he'd have been 6'6", he would have been an all-star in the NBA.
Yeah, I forget who else was on that team. One of the Ewells, Bill Ewell, maybe. I forget.
Oh, who was it? Now you're going to make me think. Was that Schilling on that team?
Yeah, Eddie. No, not Eddie Schilling. He played at Miami.
Okay, I'm not always right. Who the heck was on that team? Because I know Chapman, because they upset Wayman Tisdale in Oklahoma like 89-85. Of course, they had Don Donaher, one of the greatest coaches of all time.
That was before the shot clock, and Donaher was the number 2 exponent of four corners. I mean, he would freeze you out. They gave all the credit to the North Carolina guy, Dean Smith, for the four corners, but Donaher was one of the pioneers of that, and they were unbelievably good at. If they got the lead, they're up 3 or 4 with 5 minutes left. He'd go to four corners.
Okay, and Larry Schellenberger was who I was trying to think of. I think that's how I got.
He's an Ohio kid. He's like from Bay Village. Yeah, he was a good player. Yes. They had the two. They had one of the brothers from up there. I can't think of his name.
Ed Young and Cedric Toney were really good too. I think Cedric Toney actually played in the NBA. Guard.
He played in the NBA, and then they there were two brothers from Bay Village Bay up there on Lake Erie, and one of them was really a good player on that team. I can't think of his name.
Oh, was it? Let's see. Was it Goodwin?
Damon Goodwin. He played
Goodwin
on that team.
Yeah,
that wasn't it. That was it. This guy, I can't think of his name.
The only other people I remember on that team were Anthony Grant, and I think they had Dan Christie and Jeff Zern played a little bit too. Was it Christie? Okay.
Yeah. He took that team with his brother to an OHSAA championship in whatever division they were in. Because I did those games on TV every year, and he was a good dude too.
All right, Andy, are you good for next Friday again?
I think so.
All right.
Xavier will be on a 2-game winning streak with a win at Seton Hall and a win Tuesday at DePaul. And they'll be looking to knock off the PC Friars a week from Saturday at Seton. That's the reunion of Xavier's 1990 Sweet 16 team.
Oh, is it? Well, that'll be good.
Yep.
Tyrone Hill and them. All right. You want to tell everybody where they can follow you on Twitter, Andy?
Let me see if I remember. It's all lowercase @MM_Andy Mac. @MM_Andy Mac. I got some stuff up there explaining my theory of why the Muskies will upset Seton Hall and shock the world, and Andy Katz and all those guys tomorrow.
All right. I like that, and I'm with you. I think Xavier's got a good shot to get this game. I want to remind everybody you could hear our podcast, and you can hear our Super Bowl 54 preview show with Randy Cross, 49er legend, who I give a lot of trouble because he could have let the Bengals have one of those rings, Andy. But you can hear that on thegruelingtruth.com. You can follow me at GruelingTruth. But for now, for Andy Mack, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.